My name is Leo Vance. I died, woke up in another world, and got stuck with a system. This system is seriously messed up. It's called the ultimate simp system. Its mission for me is to bow and scrape for this world's chosen one, a celestial beauty named Seraphina Thorn. I'm supposed to give her priceless artifacts, take a knife for her, be the guy she calls when her real crush isn't available, and in the end, literally die for her, so she can ascend to godhood. The system promised that if I was the best simp ever, I'd get everything I ever wanted in the end. I actually fell for it, until my very first mission, to pick a 9-souled sun petal for Seraphina. That's when I met the other woman. Her name was Jay. Right in front of me, she plucked that celestial herb, the one I was kneeling in front of, and fed it to a rabbit at her feet. I panicked. The system panicked. I tried to explain to her that the herb was the chosen one's destiny. She laughed and asked me, "Destiny? Who decided that?" "You." Then she tilted my chin up with her fingers and yanked the system right out of my head. She looked at the glowing orb that had been screaming orders inside my skull and said one thing: "Keep it up, and I'll unmake you." From that day on, I had a feeling my career as a simp was going to have a few complications. This wasn't a simp's life. This was a dead man walking. My name is Leo Vance, and I'm on the front lines of some major drama. No, scratch that. I'm not on the front lines. I'm the epicenter of it. Right now, I'm kneeling in front of a celestial herb with a look of pious devotion on my face and a stream of WTFs in my head. Host, please regulate your emotions. Maintain the proper decorum of a dedicated simp. The cold, mechanical voice echoed in my mind. I took a deep breath and swallowed the decorum I asked that was about to fly out of my mouth. It's been 3 days since I got here, and I've figured out 2 things. First, this is a world of cultivation, the kind with flying swords and magic. Second, I'm bonded to something called the ultimate simp system. Its core directive is singular. Make me the ultimate simp for the main character, Seraphina Thorn. This was my first assignment. Find the legendary 9-souled sun petal, a herb that blooms once a millennium deep within the savage wilds. I was to present it to Seraphina, personally to win her initial favor. According to the system's script, Seraphina and her flock of admirers would show up soon and get into a massive fight over this herb. Then I, the clever opportunist, would swoop in at the critical moment, snag the prize, and present it to her, staging a dramatic scene of "I would do anything for you." Staring at the shimmering, iridescent herb, I was already picturing the moved expression in Seraphina's eyes. And then a hand reached out, a pale hand with long, elegant fingers. That hand closed around the stem of the 9-souled sun petal and, with a gentle tug, pulled it out of the ground. Pluck! The herb was gone. My entire body went rigid, like I'd been hit with a paralysis spell. Slowly, I lifted my head, my gaze traveling from the hand upwards. It was a woman. She wore a simple green tunic, her hair loosely pinned with a single wooden stick. Her face was clean, the kind of pretty that wouldn't stand out in a crowd at first, but the longer you looked, the more captivating it became. She held the 9-souled sun petal, a plant that could start a war across the entire Ethelgard realm, brought it to her nose, sniffed, and then frowned. "Smells mediocre," she commented. My mind went blank. The system screamed a blaring alarm inside my head. "Warning! Warning! The chosen one's destined opportunity has been stolen. Major plot deviation detected. Host, retrieve it immediately." Retrieve it? How the hell am I supposed to do that? My cultivation level is Acolyte 3rd tier, a total noob. This woman appeared without a sound. You didn't need to be a genius to know she was a top-tier master. The woman wasn't looking at me. She crouched down and pulled a chubby, gray-furred rabbit from her sleeve. Then, she stuck the 9-souled sun petal right in the rabbit's face. The rabbit, with a few crunches, devoured the celestial herb. My eyes nearly popped out of my skull. Sacrilege! This was absolute sacrilege. After finishing its snack, the rabbit let out a little burp, exhaling a puff of herb-scented air. "Host, what are you doing? Get in there. This is a battle for your dignity as a simp," the system shrieked. "Dignity my ass. My life is on the line." The woman's gaze finally fell on me. She tilted her head, her eyes filled with a pure curiosity, as if she were looking at a talking rock. "What are you doing kneeling here?" "Praying for rain." she asked, her voice light and devoid of emotion. My mouth opened and closed before I managed to squeeze out a single sentence. I saw that herb first. My voice was trembling. Oh, the woman nodded. And there is no end. You fed it to your rabbit. That herb is important. I forced myself, reciting the lines the system gave me. It belongs to a noble lady. It's the destiny of the chosen one. You can't just take it. The moment the words chosen one left my mouth, I felt my face burn. It sounded so juvenile. The woman's expression finally shifted. She looked as if she'd just heard the world's most ridiculous joke, the corner of her mouth twitching upwards. The chosen one, she repeated, then took a step forward. I instinctively shuffled backward. She crouched in front of me, bringing our eyes level. A faint scent, like pine needles after a snowstorm, drifted over. Destiny, she said, extending a finger to tap the center of my forehead. Her fingertip was cool. Who decided that? She paused, then asked again. You. Her question left me speechless. System detects a high-threat energy signature. Host is advised to retreat immediately. Now you want me to retreat? A minute ago, you were screaming at me to charge in. Just as I was about to make an excuse to bolt, the sound of slicing wind came from the distance. Several streaks of light landed, and there they were. Serafina and her bodyguards finally arrived. The leader was a handsome man in white robes, none other than one of the original story's male leads, the top disciple of the Lumina Order, Caleb Sterling. He saw me kneeling on the ground and the woman in green crouching before me, and his brow furrowed. Who are you? What is the meaning of this suspicious behavior? He demanded, his tone accusatory, as if interrogating a criminal. Serafina also spotted the mangled remains of the 9-souled sun petal, and her face went pale. Senior brother, the celestial herb. It's been destroyed, she cried, her voice catching, tears welling in her eyes. Seeing his goddess on the verge of tears, Caleb's anger flared. He pointed his sword at the woman in green. Witch, did you destroy the herb? Surrender now. My heart sank. It was over. These idiots were about to kick a hornet's nest the size of a mountain. The woman in green stood up, patting non-existent dust from her clothes. She didn't even glance at Caleb. She just looked down at me and said, You should move. Don't want you getting blood on your clothes. I scrambled back a good 40 feet and hid behind a large boulder, peeking out with just my eyes. Are you kidding me? When titans clash, a level 1 scrub like me would be turned to dust by the aftershock. Seeing the woman completely ignore him, Caleb's face darkened. As a golden boy who had been praised his whole life, he had never been treated with such contempt. You're asking for death. He roared, and the long sword in his hand sang, unleashing a razor-sharp wave of energy straight at the woman. My heart was in my throat. I knew Caleb was a core formation master. That single strike could cleave a small hill in two, let alone a person. And yet, the woman in green merely lifted an eyelid. She didn't even move. The wave of energy, powerful enough to shatter mountains, simply vanished into thin air about 3 feet from her. That's right, it vanished. No explosion, no shield, no counter. It was like a drop of water falling into the ocean, not even leaving a ripple. The valley fell deathly silent. The anger on Caleb's face froze, replaced by utter disbelief. Serafina and her entourage were stunned speechless. What? What just happened? One of the lackeys stammered. The woman in green finally moved. She took one step forward. Just one. Caleb and the entire group behind him fell to their knees with a collective thump. Their knees hit the ground as if struck by an invisible sledgehammer, cracking the very earth beneath them. Caleb struggled to stand, but it was as if a mountain was pressing down on him. He couldn't even lift a finger. Sweat poured from his forehead, his face turning a deep shade of crimson. "Oh, who are you?" He forced the words through gritted teeth. The woman in green walked up to him, looking down with that same placid expression. "A moment ago, you told me to surrender?" Caleb turned his head away in humiliation, refusing to speak. "Speak," she said, her tone flat. The next second, an invisible hand seemed to seize Caleb by the throat, hoisting him into the air. His legs kicked wildly, his face turning purple. Serafina, terrified, shrieked, "No, please, have mercy, Senior. We didn't know you were here. We meant no offense. Please, spare senior brother Caleb. The woman glanced at her. The chosen one, she murmured. This is it. The disdain in her voice was so thick you could cut it with a knife. Seraphina flinched under her gaze, the rest of her pleas dying in her throat. Warning, the chosen one is under spiritual pressure. Host, IT is your sworn duty to protect the female lead. The system was blaring alarms in my head again. Protect her. With what? My stunning personality. I stayed pressed against the boulder, not daring to move a muscle. The woman released her hold on Caleb, who dropped to the ground with a thud, coughing like a man half drowned. Leave, she said just one word, as if granted a pardon from a king. The group scrambled to their feet, helped Caleb up, summoned their flying swords, and fled without a second glance. They were 10 times faster than when they had arrived. In an instant, the valley was quiet again, leaving just me, her, and the rabbit munching on the last of the herb. She turned and walked toward me. I felt my heart try to beat its way out of my chest. She stopped in front of me, looking down. You're not leaving? Waiting for me to invite you to dinner? My legs are weak, I said with a pained expression. It was the truth. My calves were still cramping. She seemed to find that amusing again, the corner of her lip twitching. What's your name? She asked. Leo Vance. Jay. I nodded, committing it to memory, while thinking, Jay, what kind of supervillain name is that? Just now, Jay said, crouching down on my level again. Was there something talking to you inside your head? My world tilted on its axis. How could she know? It was a bit noisy, Jay noted with a slight frown, as if commenting on bad weather. My mind was a complete blank. Detecting unknown energy probe. System core under attack. Activating highest level defense protocols. Defense failed. A blood-curdling scream echoed in my mind, and then silence. The system that had been tormenting me for 3 days went quiet. I stared at Jay, my jaw on the floor. She extended a finger and tapped the air in front of me. A fist-sized, faintly glowing white orb materialized out of thin air. The orb trembled slightly, like a frightened jello mold. So that was my Simp system, and this woman had just plucked it right out of my brain. Jay held the orb between her fingers, examining it. This little thing dares to call itself ultimate? She scoffed, her face a mask of disdain. Then she looked back at me, her expression turning a little more serious. Now tell me, what exactly is a simp? 3. What's it like to explain the word simp to a woman who is very likely the most powerful being in the realm? I, Leo Vance, am currently finding out. I swallowed hard, my throat feeling as dry as a desert. A simp is... I racked my brain, trying to translate the concept into terms she might understand. It's someone who, for the sake of another person, provides unconditional, bottomless devotion, asking for nothing in return, just hoping to be noticed. I stammered through the explanation, my face burning with shame. This was mortifying. Jay listened intently, even nodding. It sounds like a spiritual affliction, she offered, a surprisingly accurate diagnosis. I was speechless. I mean, she wasn't wrong. So, this little thing, Jay said, shaking the trembling orb in her hand. Its function is to force you to contract this illness. You could put it that way. I felt my dignity being ground into the dirt. Why choose that Seraphina girl? Jay asked, genuinely curious. She doesn't seem very bright, and her taste in men is terrible. Every one of those followers was dumber than the last. Her assessment was sharp, precise, and brutally honest. What could I say? The system chose her. The script demanded it. With the system already captured, I figured there was no point in hiding anything. I gave her the whole story, the transmigration, the system, the chosen one plot, like dumping a bucket of beans. After I finished, Jay had a strange look on her face, as if she'd just been told a very long, very unfunny joke. So, to summarize, she said, some unknown entity wrote a story. In this story, the girl named Seraphina is the protagonist, destined to level up, defeat monsters, and eventually stand at the pinnacle of the world. And you are a stepping stone on her path to glory, responsible for delivering power-ups, equipment, and eventually, your own life. Why, yes, I mumbled, my head hanging low. And what's in it for you? I didn't want any of it. I nearly shouted, my voice cracking. It forced me. If I failed a mission, it would electrocute me. I'm serious. The pain was like having my soul torn apart. Jay glanced down at the orb in her hand. The orb trembled even more violently. Oh, she nodded. So it's broken. It needs to be fixed. Fixed? You can fix this thing? She then raised her other hand and, using 2 fingers, began to knead the orb. Yes, knead. Like it was a ball of dough. The orb let out a series of silent screams that manifested as psychic shockwaves in my head, making my scalp tingle. Core programming being altered. Mission module resetting. Punishment mechanism deleted. Ultimate Simp system. Renaming to Apprentice Attendance System V0. 1 beta. New main quest issued. Sir J. Mission 1. Give Lady J a shoulder massage. Reward. Cultivation increased by 1 minor tier. Failure penalty, none. I was completely and utterly dumbfounded. It was fixed, just like that. That was faster than reinstalling an operating system. Jay casually tossed the orb, and it shot back into my head with a whoosh. The cold, mechanical voice in my mind was gone, replaced by a timid, almost sycophantic one. Respected host. Ah, no. Respected apprentice attendant Leo. Would you like to commence the shoulder massage mission now? We can provide a complete anatomical chart of pressure points to ensure Lady J's satisfaction. My brain shut down. This system's will to live was off the charts. Jay clapped her hands together as if she had just finished a trivial chore. She stood up and said to me, "Let's go." Huh? Go where? I asked instinctively. You're my apprentice attendant, aren't you? She stated, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. You're coming home with me to fulfill your duties. With that, she turned and walked away. The rabbit, having finished its celestial snack, hopped along at her feet. I looked at her retreating back, then at the brand new mission panel in my mind, a wave of complex emotions washing over me. It felt like I'd jumped out of one fire and into another, but at least the new boss seemed a lot more reliable than the old script. And, most importantly, there was no penalty for failure. That was the key. I scrambled up from the ground, brushed the dirt off my clothes, and hurried to catch up. Hey, Lady J, wait up. And so I, Leo Vance, bid farewell to my pathetic life as a simp in training and was honorably promoted to apprentice attendant, which now that I think about it, doesn't sound that much better. 4J's home wasn't some celestial palace on a sacred mountain. It was in a perfectly ordinary valley. A few bamboo huts, a medicinal herb garden, a small creek. If I hadn't seen her treat a core formation master like a disobedient child, I would have thought she was just a reclusive herbalist. My first official task as an apprentice attendant wasn't a massage, but starting a fire to cook dinner. Staring at the pile of muddy vegetables in the kitchen, I fell into deep thought. As a modern guy who had never cooked anything more complicated than toast, how was I supposed to use a rustic, wood-fired stove? Lady J, I asked, poking my head out of the kitchen hut. Don't cultivators like you just absorb energy from the air instead of eating? Jay was lying in a rocking chair in the yard, her eyes closed, with the rabbit, now named Smokey, resting on her stomach. She didn't even open her eyes. I have a sensitive stomach, she said flatly. Can't digest raw manna. I almost choked. Is that the best excuse you could come up with? You don't have a sensitive stomach. You're a foodie. Grumbling internally, I still had to make dinner. After a half hour of fumbling, I finally managed to light the stove using a basic fire starter cantrip. Then I washed all the vegetables I could find and threw them into a pot. When I placed a bowl of dark, sludgy, unidentifiable stew in front of Jay, I was too ashamed to look her in the eye. Jay opened her eyes, glanced at the bowl, then glanced at me. She didn't say a word, but I felt the ambient temperature drop several degrees. Well, it doesn't look great, but the taste should be okay. I chuckled nervously. Jay picked up her chopsticks, speared an unknown lump, and put it in her mouth. She chewed once. Then, with a completely straight face, she spit it out. Leo, she said. Yes, I yelped. From now on, you have a new duty in addition to serving me. Anything. Learn to cook. Right? I was the attendant, after all. In the end, Jay made dinner herself. It was a simple bowl of broth with hand-pulled noodles, but the flavor was so exquisite, I almost swallowed my own tongue. That's when I realized she wasn't just a foodie. She was a gourmet. After dinner, The sky had darkened. Jay sat on the porch watching the moon while I dutifully heated water. Because my new mission had arrived. Mission 2. Prepare a hot foot bath for Lady J. Reward. Proficiency in the Acolyte Level Cultivation Manual, Mana Induction 101 plus 100. This I could do. This was my jam. I carried a bucket of perfectly heated water and placed it at Jay's feet. My lady, the water is ready. Jay grunted in acknowledgement and slipped her feet into the wooden bucket. Her feet were pale, her ankles slender. They looked almost ethereal in the rising steam. I crouched down, preparing to give them a token wash to complete the mission. Suddenly, Jay spoke. Those people kneeling in front of you today, what group were they from? The Lumina Order, I answered honestly. Supposedly the most powerful righteous faction. Oh, right, Jay said casually. I remember now. A few thousand years ago, their founding patriarch tried to become my apprentice. I broke 3 of his ribs and threw him off my mountain. Are you serious right now? You beat up their founder, and now you've thrashed his descendants. This feud is getting a little out of hand. Just as I was worrying about that, a commotion erupted outside the yard. Witch, come out and face your doom. A booming voice shattered the valley's peace. I peered out. A crowd of dozens stood outside the yard, all armed with artifacts, their expressions menacing. Leading them was an old man with a white beard, dressed in the robes of a Lumina Order elder. Caleb Sterling and Seraphina Thorne, who had fled earlier, were right there with him. Caleb pointed at Jay, complaining to the old man. Grand Elder, that's her. That's the witch who not only stole the celestial herb, but also attacked us. She has no respect for the Lumina Order. Seraphina was wiping away tears, looking as if she had suffered a great injustice. The white-bearded elder was Master Valerius, the Lumina Order's enforcer, a soul manifestation level master, and a famous figure in the Ethelgard realm. His gaze was like lightning as he glared at Jay and snorted. A mere upstart daring to harm disciples of my order. In light of your long years of cultivation, I will offer you a choice. Cripple your own powers and return with me to the order for punishment, and I may yet spare your life. What an imposing speech. I was getting nervous. This was a much bigger deal than the afternoon scuffle. However, Jay's reaction left me utterly stunned. She didn't even turn her head, simply waving a dismissive hand in my direction. Leo, yes. The water's getting a bit cool. Go get another bucket. I just stood there, frozen. Lady, there are dozens of masters at your door screaming for your head, and you're still in the mood for a foot bath. How can one person be so completely unbothered? Seeing himself ignored so thoroughly, Master Valerius's face turned a shade of puce. Insolent whelp, he roared, flicking the ceremonial whisk in his hand. Thousands of silver threads shot out, forming a giant net that descended on Jay from all sides. The net shimmered with magical energy. It was clearly a powerful artifact. I was so scared my soul nearly left my body, and I instinctively ducked. Jay, however, didn't so much as shift her posture. She just made a soft tisk sound, so noisy. The moment the words left her mouth, the formidable silver net spontaneously combusted in midair. There was no fireball, no incantation. It just started burning on its own, silently, and in seconds, it was reduced to a puff of ash that scattered in the night wind. Master Valerius's artifact was gone. Just like that, he himself staggered back as if struck by a heavy blow, spitting out a mouthful of blood, his face a mask of pure horror. You, who in the world are you? He stammered, his voice trembling. The Lumina Order disciples outside the yard were petrified. Their revered Grand Elder, a master of soul manifestation, didn't even get to touch a hair on his opponent's head before being utterly defeated. Jay finally decided her water was too cold. She stood up, barefoot, and padded across the stone tiles, walking step by step toward the yard gate. She moved slowly, but with every step she took, the crowd of Lumina Order disciples took an involuntary step back. There wasn't a flicker of magical energy around her. She looked like a defenseless mortal woman. But the invisible pressure she exuded was so immense it felt hard to breathe. You people, Jay said, reaching the gate and tilting her head as she looked at the pale-faced crowd, are making a racket outside my house in the middle of the night. Why? Master Valerius, struggling to remain upright, blustered. You witch! You harmed our disciples and stole our order's destined prize. We are here to enact justice. Enact justice? Jay chuckled, a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Your justice has a wide jurisdiction. It even covers what a rabbit in someone else's yard eats for a snack. Sophistry, Caleb dared to shout. The nine-souled sun petal is a priceless treasure. How could you let a mere animal defile it? A treasure? Jay glanced at him. To me, it's just a weed. It grew in my valley, and I'll feed it to whomever I please. She paused, her tone growing colder. You, on the other hand, trespassed on my land, attempted to steal my property, and even injure my associate. As she spoke, she gestured back at me. I was bewildered. When was I injured? I've been a spectator this whole time. But I didn't dare say a word. If the boss says I'm injured, then I'm injured. So who, Jay asked, is using sophistry now? Master Valerius was choked into silence. He was right. While the Savage Wilds was technically neutral ground, it operated on a first-come, first-served basis. She found it first, so it was hers. Their aggressive attempt to claim it was, by all rights, a transgression. They were just so used to bullying others that they never imagined they'd run into a steel wall. Even so, your methods were too vicious, one disciple protested feebly. Jay sighed, looking deeply troubled. I was trying to reason with you, she said. Then, she raised a single finger, a slender, pale finger. She drew a line in the air in front of her. A nearly invisible rift spread from her fingertip. There was no sound, no light. But for Master Valerius and the dozen disciples standing behind him, their robes, the swords at their waists, the crowns in their hair, everything was neatly sliced in two. The cuts were as smooth as glass. A mountain breeze blew past, and the severed pieces of clothing and artifacts fluttered to the ground. In an instant, the elite disciples of the Lumina Order were left in tatters, utterly humiliated. A few of them had even had their belts cut and were now scrambling to hold up their pants. Dead silence. A chill ran up everyone's spine, from the soles of their feet to the crowns of their heads. That last attack, if it had been an inch forward, they didn't dare to think about it. Now, Jay said, lowering her finger and looking at the trembling crowd. Do you understand my reasoning? The members of the Lumina Order fled as if their lives depended on it. They didn't even have the courage to utter a parting threat. I watched them disappear, then looked back at Jay, who was nonchalantly returning to soak her feet in the now lukewarm water. My entire perception of the world had just been rocked to its core. A soul manifestation master, the most powerful righteous faction, dozens of experts. In front of her, they were no different than a gang of neighborhood hooligans. She had dismissed them with a display of power so absolute, it was humiliating. This wasn't just strong, this was absurd. Side quest triggered. Clean up the mess. Collect the artifact fragments left behind by the Lumina Order. Reward: 1 storage pouch, 10 cubic meters. The ever-pragmatic system issued a new task in my mind. I quickly ran out of the yard and gathered all the broken sword pieces, jade pendants, and other magical trinkets, piling them up. You had to hand it to the top faction, they were rich. Even though these fragments were useless now, the materials were top grade. You could probably get a good price selling them for scrap. When I returned with a pile of junk, Jay had finished her foot bath and was slowly drying her feet with a towel. My lady, what should I do with this stuff? I asked. Throw it out, she said casually. Throw it out. I couldn't believe it. But this is all good stuff. It's a pile of scrap metal, she commented, then tossed the used towel to me. Go wash this. Well, so much for my fantasy of being a rising prodigy. I was back to being the servant. I resignedly went to wash the towel. When I came back, Jay handed me a book. It had a plain blue cover with no title. What's this? I asked, curious. Mana Induction 101, she said. You wanted to cultivate, right? Read it. A spark of joy lit up inside me. This was a mission reward. Even though the system gave me proficiency, having the actual text would surely speed up my training. I thanked her profusely and took it. I opened the first page and my jaw dropped. On it was a diagram of a small figure twisted into an impossibly contorted pose. Next to it was a small note, Mana Induction Stance 1, opening the Celestial Gate. This pose, how do I put this? It looked like the figure had turned itself into a human pretzel. I tried to mimic it and nearly threw out my back. My lady, is this physically possible for a human being? I asked through gritted teeth. Jay glanced at me. If you can't do it, it means your aptitude is poor. Fine, my aptitude is poor. The following days settled into a strange rhythm. During the day, under Jay's kind guidance, I practiced cooking and worked on the insane poses from Mana Induction 101. At night, I heated water for her foot baths, gave her shoulder massages, and listened to her tell ancient, terrifying secrets of the cultivation world. For instance, she mentioned that the current patriarch of the Shadow Dominion had once pursued her. She hung him from her gate to air dry for 3 days and 3 nights, after which he turned to the dark side out of heartbreak and rage. And the current beast emperor of the monster clans, who was originally a small fox, had his tail plucked bald by her as a child and still avoids her to this day. I listened, stunned, feeling less like an attendant and more like an audience for a secret history of the gods. And in the middle of this bizarre routine, my own cultivation level was skyrocketing. In just 10 days, I went from Acolyte 3rd tier to 9th tier, just a hair's breadth away from breaking through to the Adept stage. This speed was unheard of. I attributed it to Jay's mediocre-smelling foot bath water. Every day, when I went to dump the water, I would secretly dip a finger in and rub it on myself. The pure energy in that water was more potent than any elixir I had ever heard of. I even started to suspect that her whole foot bath routine was just a roundabout way of infusing me with her power, and that Mana Induction 101 manual, despite its torturous poses, was incredibly effective. Every time I mastered a new stance, I could feel the mana in my body growing denser. Even my cooking, which was still terrible, Jay would eat a few bites of every day with a straight face. I started to get a strange feeling. Maybe I wasn't her attendant. Maybe I was her disciple. Or some kind of pet she was raising. This feeling peaked on the day I successfully broke through to the Adept stage. I had finally managed to hold the last, most difficult pose in the manual. A massive surge of energy exploded within me, shattering my bottleneck. I was an adept. I excitedly ran out of my room to share the good news with Jay. And then I saw him. A man stood in the yard, dressed in black, emanating an aura of pure dread. Jay was sitting in her rocking chair, looking at the man with an expression I had never seen before. It was ice cold. "What are you doing here?" Jay asked. The man didn't speak. He simply dropped to one knee, bowing his proud head. "My lady," he said, his voice raspy. "I missed you." The moment I saw the man in black, the system in my head, which had been quiet for a while, started blaring alarms. Not the usual sharp warnings, but a stream of garbled data, as if it was trying to analyze something far beyond its capacity. Detecting unquantifiable life form, entity beyond the rules. Abyssal. Warning. Warning. The voice was static-filled and terrified, and then, for the second time, it crashed. I stood frozen in the doorway, not knowing whether to advance or retreat. Even though the man was kneeling, the cold, murderous aura rolling off him in waves was enough to freeze me solid from a distance. This was definitely a stone-cold killer. Was he here for revenge? "You miss me?" Jay let out a small laugh, devoid of any warmth. "Did you miss wishing I was dead? Or did you miss having me around to clean up your messes?" The man in black lowered his head even further. "You just me legi. The Shadow Dominion cannot be without its ruler." The Shadow Dominion. My heart skipped a beat. Wow. I'd somehow jumped from the righteous faction's storyline straight into a deep cover mission with the demonic one. This powerful lady. Was she the legendary ruler of the Shadow Dominion? Kalen, Jay said his name. When I abdicated, I said I would never return. Have my words become so meaningless to you? The man named Kalen flinched. "I would not dare," he said deeply. "But the other lords have grown restless. Their squabbles are not my concern." Jay cut him off. "The rule of the Dominion is strength. If they have the power, let them fight and crown a new ruler. But they covet the World Ender's wheel that you left behind." Kalen said urgently. "If that artifact falls into their hands, all the realms will be plunged into chaos." Jay finally sat up in her rocking chair. She looked at Kalen, her gaze deep and unreadable. "So, You came today to persuade me to go back and fix things. Kalen fell silent. Or Jay's voice grew colder still. Are you also after the artifact? Kalen's head shot up, his eyes filled with panic and hurt. My lady, my loyalty to you is absolute. I would never, he scrambled to explain, even shuffling forward on his knees. I was only worried for your safety if they were to discover your location here. They already know, Jay said flatly. Kalen froze. From the day I moved into this valley, anyone in the 3 realms who wanted to find me, found me, Jay said. But you see, in the last 10 days, besides that pack of fools from the Lumina Order, who else has come? Kalen was speechless. She was right. Why had no one come? Because they didn't dare. Because everyone knew her temper. Anyone who disturbed her, without an invitation, had to be prepared for total annihilation. Kalen was able to walk into this yard today, not because he was powerful, but because Jay had allowed it. Go back, Jay said, sinking back in her chair and closing her eyes. Tell them that the next person who bothers me, I will personally scatter their entire family's ashes to the wind. And I always keep my promises. The sheer audacity in her voice was breathtaking. Kalen remained kneeling, unmoving. He seemed to want to say more, but looking at Jay's implacable demeanor, he swallowed his words. He slowly rose to his feet and bowed respectfully. As he turned, his gaze fell on me. His eyes were like poison daggers, cold and sharp. He sized me up, his stare filled with scrutiny and killing intent. I stiffened, feeling like a mouse being watched by a viper. My lady, he said, not looking at Jay but still facing my direction, his voice chilling. What is this thing you have with you? The word he used was thing. I felt offended, but I didn't dare make a sound. Jay, without opening her eyes, answered lazily. A new attendant I picked up. He cooks and washes my feet. An attendant? Kalen's gaze grew even colder. A mere adept stage human is fit to serve you. His meaning was clear. He is unworthy. Let me kill him for you. My blood ran cold. This was it. This was how I died. However, Jay's next words made my eyes nearly fall out of their sockets. His noodles taste better than yours. The air solidified. The expression on Kalen's face was a cinematic masterpiece of emotion. Shock, disbelief, and confusion all morphed into a tidal wave of jealousy and hurt. Yes, I saw it clearly. It was hurt. This demonic overlord, who radiated, I'm a weapon of mass destruction, was actually looking like a puppy whose favorite toy had just been given to someone else. My lady, he stammered, his lips moving, trying to form a defense. Your noodles always smell like blood, Jay added, twisting the knife. They're disgusting. Kalen was silent. His face cycled through red, white, and green before settling on a ghostly gray. I could feel the murderous aura that had been pressing down on me deflate like a popped balloon, leaving only a sense of defeat. A demonic lord who could make the realms tremble was crushed, not by a superior power, but by a negative review of his cooking skills. This world was insane. Jay waved her hand dismissively, like shooing a fly. If there's nothing else, get out. You're annoying me. Kalen gave me one last, complicated look. It was full of resentment and jealousy, but the killing intent had faded significantly. He bowed silently to Jay one more time. Then his form dissolved into a black mist and vanished. The yard was peaceful once more. I let out a long, shaky breath, feeling like I'd just taken a round trip to the underworld. My lady, I walked over, asking quietly, was that one of your former subordinates? She grunted. One of my 4 shadow lords. He's in charge of punishments. They call him Kalen the Executioner. The Executioner. I shivered. That name didn't exactly scream friendly. He looked like he wanted to kill me, I said, still shaken. He wants to kill a lot of people. Jay opened her eyes and glanced at me. You're not that special. She had a point. I couldn't even argue. All right, don't just stand there. Jay sat up. I'm hungry. Go peel me an apple. All right. I hurried to the kitchen, found a large, red apple, washed it carefully, and started peeling it with a small knife. My hands were still trembling. The scene that had just unfolded had been a massive shock to my system. As I peeled, my mind raced. Who exactly was Jay? She seemed to be the supreme ruler of the demonic faction, but couldn't care less about their affairs. She claimed the Lumina Order's founder wanted to be her apprentice, which made her sound like a legendary master of the righteous path. She said she plucked the Beast Emperor's tail bald. Her social network was unbelievably complex. The more I thought about it, the more I felt like I had stumbled into the eye of a hurricane, and I was the tiny, shivering shrimp at its center. Are you planning to peel that apple until sunrise? Jay's voice, tinged with impatience, came from the yard. I flinched, and my hand slipped. The knife sliced my finger. Ouch! A thin cut opened up, and a bead of blood welled. I quickly stuck the finger in my mouth. Clumsy. Jay was suddenly standing right behind me. I jumped, spinning around. She didn't look at my hand. Instead, she took the half-peeled apple from me and, with a few deft movements, finished the job. Her peeling was a single, unbroken spiral. Then, she pushed the peeled apple back into my hand. Eat it, she said. I was confused, but you wanted to eat it. I don't want it anymore, she said, her eyes finally flicking to my injured finger, her brow furrowing slightly. Go clean that cut. With that, she turned and walked back in the yard. I looked at the apple in my hand, then at her retreating back, and a strange feeling bloomed in my chest. It was warm. I looked down and took a bite of the apple. It was very sweet. Hidden quest completed. Received Jay's concern, 1 out of 100. Reward, 1 vial of miracle salve, a potent healing agent. The system's notification chimed. I stared at the small jade vial that had appeared in my hand, then at the tiny cut on my finger that was already starting to heal, and fell into deep thought. Was the bar for concern set a little too low? Also, why 1%? Did this mean I had to get her to show concern for me 99 more times to unlock some ultimate achievement? After Kaylin's visit, my life gained a new, recurring event, entertaining Jay's old friends. And none of them were ordinary people. The next day, a woman dripping with jewels and dressed in flamboyant silks arrived. The moment she appeared, she cried out in a high-pitched voice, "Sister, I finally found you." She then tried to throw herself at Jay, only to be kicked straight into the yard's pond. "Speak properly, or I'll pull out your tongue," Jay said coldly. The woman climbed out of the pond, soaking wet, but not the least bit angry. In fact, she was still smiling. "Sister, you're as charming as ever." I later learned that this was the Beast Emperor, a 9-tailed celestial fox named Vexia. She was the one who had her tail plucked bald by Jay. Her purpose for visiting was to borrow a powerful artifact from Jay to use in a fight against her mortal enemy. Jay's response was, "Get out." Vexia refused to leave, throwing a tantrum in the yard, accusing Jay of playing favorites and reminding her that she once gifted Kaylin a demonic saber. Jay, annoyed beyond measure, pointed at me. "Fight him. If you win, I'll lend it to you." Vexia looked at me, a fledgling adept, then back at Jay, her face a mask of disbelief. "Sister, are you trying to insult me? Or yourself? Are you fighting or not? If not, get out." Vexia gritted her teeth. Fine, a fight it was. But before we could even start, Kaylin showed up again. He was carrying a food container, his face dark. Without a word, he started fighting Vexia right there in the yard. "Seductress, who gave you permission to get near her ladyship? Charcoal face, who are you to tell me what to do? She doesn't belong to you." One was a shadow lord, the other a beast emperor. Their battle was apocalyptic. If Jay hadn't been watching, I suspect they would have leveled the entire valley. I hid by the kitchen door, trembling. Jay sat in her rocking chair, calmly eating sunflower seeds as she watched the show, occasionally offering a critique. "Kaylin, your Shadow Dragon Strike lacks power. Did you skip breakfast? Vexia, your footwork is a mess. What's the point of looking flashy if you can't land a hit?" The two of them, their faces flushing with embarrassment, fought even more fiercely. In the end, it was a draw. Both were battered and bruised. Kaylin placed his food container on the stone table. "My lady, I followed an ancient recipe to prepare this dragon's heart and phoenix marrow soup for you." Not to be outdone, Vexia pulled a platter of shimmering, mystical fruits from her storage ring. "Sister, these are sun-kissed peaches from the sacred lands of the Beast clans. They grant eternal youth." They both looked at Jay with pleading eyes, like two giant dogs waiting for their master's praise. It was then I realized they weren't here to fight each other. They were here to fight for her attention. Jay didn't even glance at their top-tier offerings. She pointed at the plate of slightly burnt stir-fried greens I had just brought out. Today, she said, I'm eating this. The gazes of Kaylin and Vexia instantly turned into daggers and shot straight at me. I didn't think I was going to survive the day. Jay picked up a piece of burnt green with her chopsticks, put it in her mouth, and swallowed without changing her expression. Then, looking at the two petrified figures, she said flatly, Take your things and go, and take care of them on your way out. She gestured toward the entrance of the yard. I peered out, and what do you know, the white-bearded Master Valerius from the Lumina Order was back with another group of people. This time, however, they didn't dare get close. They stood at a distance, with Valerius at the front, holding a large chest, his face plastered with a sycophantic, eager-to-please smile. These flies are getting annoying, Jay commented. Kaylin and Vexia exchanged a look, instantly forming a temporary alliance. As you command. The two of them blurred, shooting out of the yard. The next moment, the sounds of terrified screams and panicked yelps echoed from outside. I shrank back. I was beginning to think Jay's little valley was about to become the epicenter of the entire cultivation world. And I was the guy in charge of cooking for the storm. The pressure was immense. Jay's lifestyle could be summed up in 2 words. As she pleases. If she was hungry, I cooked. If she wanted a foot bath, I heated water. If she thought the grass in the yard looked unruly, I weeded. And the powerful masters who could make the realms tremble, they had to wait on her mood if they wanted an audience. Furthermore, at some point, a strange new rule began to circulate. If you wanted to see Jay, you had to get through me first. Not by defeating me in combat, but by making me satisfied. The first person to discover this shortcut was Master Valerius of the Lumina Order. After being beaten up by Kaylin and Vexia, he didn't hold a grudge. Instead, his resolve to curry favor with Jay became even stronger. Every day, he sent his disciples with all sorts of rare treasures, priceless elixirs, and secret cultivation manuals. Jay wouldn't even look at them, telling me to use them as kindling for the stove. Valerius was so distressed his hair was turning whiter, until one day, the disciple he sent saw me struggling with a complex problem, not in math, but in alchemy concerning the precise control of heat. That disciple happened to be a genius alchemist and offered me a few casual pointers. It was like a light bulb went on in my head. That day, for the first time, Jay allowed Master Valerius into the yard. He only got to stand there for 3 minutes and say 5 sentences before being kicked out. But when news of this got out, the entire cultivation world exploded. So the correct way to get on Lady J's good side wasn't to give her gifts, but to help her attendant solve his problems. And just like that, I, an unremarkable adept stage cultivator, became a celebrity. Every day, masters of all kinds lined up to see me. Young friend Leo, I see your swordsmanship is a bit rough. I have a copy of the 13 Breezes sword style here. Why don't you take a look? Some sword sect master. Leo, my boy, that robe of yours is made of poor material. It has no defensive properties. I have this celestial silk armor, impervious to blades and flames. Why don't you try it on for size? Some master blacksmith. Mr. Vance, I heard you've been studying formations recently. Here's my life's work, an introduction to the Tao of formations. I hope it may be of some assistance. Some formation grandmaster. They were all unfailingly polite, their smiles warmer than the sun, treating me better than their own fathers. At first, I was overwhelmed and humbled. Eventually, I just got used to it. I felt like the emperor's favorite court eunuch. Any official who wanted an audience with the emperor had to bribe me first. And in the middle of this passive learning, my skill set grew at an astonishing rate. Alchemy, blacksmithing, formations, swordsmanship. While I was a jack of all trades and master of none, my teachers were the best in the world. My cultivation level shot up from early stage adept to the peak, just one step away from core formation. Jay saw all of this but said nothing. Sometimes, when I was surrounded by a crowd of masters, awkwardly accepting their tuition fees, I'd see her sitting in her rocking chair with a faint, knowing smile on her lips. I had a strong suspicion that this was not only something she permitted, but something she had orchestrated. She was training me in her own strange, roundabout way. One day, I was in the yard learning how to draw a lightning summoning talisman from a talisman master. The master was guiding my hand, his attitude the epitome of respect. Mr. Vance, you see, the stroke must be done in a single, fluid motion. If your energy breaks, the talisman is ruined. Just as I was getting into it, Kalen appeared again. His face was grim. He grabbed the talisman master and threw him out of the yard like a sack of potatoes. Get lost. Don't corrupt her ladyship's attendant. The master scrambled away without a word. Kalen walked up to me and shoved a jade slip into my hand. This is the manual of the 9 hells. It's 100 times more powerful than some pathetic lightning talisman, he said stiffly. Before I could respond, Vexia floated down as well. She snatched the jade slip from Kalen, tossed it aside, and pressed a fragrant silk-bound booklet into my hands. Don't listen to these boys and their obsession with fighting, she purred, winking at me. Learn this the phantom step. It's better to know how to run when you can't win. A boy needs to know how to protect himself, too. And then, the two of them started arguing over what I should be learning. I was caught in the middle, my head spinning. A voice called from the hut. Leo, come inside. Granted a reprieve, I scurried away, leaving Kalen and Vexia to glare at each other in the yard. I entered the bamboo hut. Jay was sitting cross-legged on her bed. Sit, she said, pointing to the cushion opposite her. I sat down as instructed. The things they've given you, have you learned them all? She asked. I've learned a little of everything, I answered honestly. Good, she nodded. Now, I want you to forget it all. I blinked. Huh, I thought I must have misheard her. Forget it, I asked dumbfounded. Why would I forget it? For the past month, I had learned sword styles, formations, alchemy, and blacksmithing. Even if I was a dilettante, it was still a formidable collection of skills. And now, Jay wanted me to erase it all? What you have learned, Jay said, her gaze calm and steady, belongs to others. It is their path. The sword sect master's path is the sword. The formation grandmaster's path is the array. Kalen's path is slaughter. Vexia's path is illusion. She paused, then asked, what is your path? My path. The question stumped me. I had never considered it. I came to this world to be a simp, then to be an attendant, just to survive. Everything I had done was because I was pushed. My own path. What was it? You are like a bottle filled with miscellaneous junk, Jay continued. What you must do now is empty the bottle. Then you can fill it with something that is truly your own. I don't know what belongs to me, I admitted, feeling lost. Then find it. As she spoke, she reached out and touched the spot between my eyebrows. A cool, refreshing energy instantly flooded my mind. My head buzzed as if struck by a gong. All the sword forms, array diagrams, alchemy recipes, and talisman symbols I had learned began to blur, fade, and finally dissolve into a blank canvas. My memories weren't erased, but I felt a sense of detachment. I knew the knowledge existed, but it no longer felt like a part of me. It was like a book I had read or a story I had heard. Pure information, not an instinct I could call upon. My mind felt clearer than it ever had before. From this day on, until you form your core, you are forbidden from using any of the skills you have learned, Jay said, withdrawing her finger. That includes the fire starter cantrip. Oh, then, how am I supposed to cook? I asked, my practical concerns overriding everything else. Jay was silent. She looked like my question had short-circuited her brain. Use firewood, she finally bit out. Oh, right. And so, from that day forward, I became a mortal again. I couldn't use a cantrip to light the stove, a cleaning charm to sweep the floor, or a wind spell to get around faster. I had to do everything the old-fashioned way, with flint and steel, with a broom, with my own 2 feet. At first, it was incredibly frustrating. Everything took longer, and everything was more tiring. But slowly, I began to notice something different. When I felt the grain of the wood with my hands and smelled the smoke of a real fire, I developed a new understanding of fire. It was no longer a combination of symbols and mana, but a tangible thing with heat, form, and life. When I walked every inch of the valley and watched every flower bloom and wilt, I developed a new appreciation for the world. Mana was no longer an abstract concept from a textbook. It was in the wind, the water, the soil, the sunlight. My mind became incredibly calm. I stopped thinking about raising my cultivation level, about pleasing Jay, about the lessons from the various masters. My days were simple and repetitive. Cooking, cleaning, gardening, chopping wood. One afternoon, I was chopping a log. Under the old locust tree in the yard, a fisherman in a straw cloak and hat had appeared at some point. He had no fishing rod. He just sat there silently, as if asleep. I paid him no mind. The number of strange visitors to the valley had been increasing, and I was used to it by now. I raised my axe, focusing on the log in front of me. I used no magic, only my physical strength. I could feel the contraction of my muscles, the power flowing from my heels to my waist, through my arms, and into the axe blade. I could see the grain of the wood find its weakest point. I swung the axe. Crack! The log split cleanly in two, the cut perfectly smooth. 3. The fisherman suddenly started clapping. He stood up, taking off his hat to reveal an ordinary-looking face. That strike, he said with admiration, had a sliver of the path in it. I looked at him, but didn't speak. Jay emerged from her hut. She didn't seem surprised to see the old man. "You're late," Jay said. The old man smiled. "Not at all. Right on time. I saw what I came to see." He looked at me with an appreciative gaze. "Young man, would you be interested in learning the path of strength with me?" Before I could react, Kalen and Vexia descended from the sky. "Old man, don't you dare try to poach her ladyship's attendant." And then Master Valerius, the sword sect master, the master blacksmith. Every master who had ever visited appeared, one after another, as if on cue, crowding the small yard. Every single one of them was staring at me with burning intensity. "Young friend Leo, the sword is the only true path." "Nonsense. The path of creation is the foundation of all things. Formations are the key to touching the heavens." Their arguments gave me a headache. I looked at them, then at Jay, who was watching with a placid expression, and suddenly I understood. My path wasn't the sword, or the array, or strength. My path was choice, the choice of which road to walk. And right now, I didn't want to choose any of the roads they were offering. I tightened my grip on the axe, looked at the crowd, and shook my head. Then, I turned back to the remaining half of the log and swung the axe a second time. 12. The moment I swung the axe, the world fell silent. My eyes saw only the log. My mind held only one thought. Split it. There was no technique, no special art, only the purest application of force and the most focused will. The axe fell. There was no sound. The log separated into two perfect halves, not with a crack, but as if it had simply deconstructed. The cut surfaces were utterly smooth, like mirrors. A wave of understanding washed over me. The mana inside my body began to churn uncontrollably. The bottleneck of the peak adept stage shattered instantly. A vast tide of energy surged into me from all directions, gathering in my spiritual center, compressing, and beginning to spin. I was forming my core. All the masters held their breath, watching me with intense concentration. They wanted to see what kind of core he would form. This person they had all taught, only to have his knowledge wiped clean by Jay. Would it be shaped like a sword? An array? A flame? The vortex of energy grew larger, enveloping the entire valley. I closed my eyes, immersing myself in a wondrous sensation. I could feel something taking shape within me. It wasn't round, nor was it square. It was shaped like an axe. No, wait. It morphed into a cooking pot, then a talisman, a sword, an alchemy furnace. It shifted continuously, cycling through every piece of knowledge I had ever learned and then forgotten. Finally, all the forms vanished. It settled into a simple, round, grayish orb. It looked utterly, profoundly ordinary, even more unremarkable than the lowest grade cores. What kind of core is that? Is it defective? There's no aura at all. The masters muttered among themselves, their expressions a mixture of disappointment and confusion. I opened my eyes and looked inward at my plain, unassuming core. I could feel a strange power within it, a power of all things returning to one. Jay walked to my side and looked at me. "How do you feel?" "Good," I said, and it was the truth. Though my core looked useless, I knew it was powerful. It gave me the feeling that I could use anything to perform any skill. I could wield an axe to execute the sword sect's finest techniques. I could use a spatula to lay the formation grandmaster's most complex arrays. The path was a tool, and I was the one who used the tools. From this day forward, Jay announced, looking at the crowd of masters in the yard, he has graduated. Graduated? When did I even enroll? In the future, if you have business, don't bother me, and don't bother him. Jay continued. He has his own path to walk. The masters looked at each other. Master Valerius was the first to react. He turned to me and performed a deep, formal bow. Congratulations, Taoist friend Leo. Your future on the great path is limitless. The others quickly followed suit. Congratulations, Taoist friend Leo. The way they looked at me had completely changed. I was no longer a tool to curry favor with Jay. I was a peer, a true cultivator with immeasurable potential. I felt a little awkward. I glanced at Jay. Her expression was neutral, but I thought I saw a flicker of pride in her eyes. Maybe it was just my imagination. After everyone had left, the yard was quiet again. I walked up to Jay. My lady, I wanted to thank her. The food is burning, she said, pointing toward the kitchen. The smell of smoke drifted over. I rushed back to the kitchen, staring at the lump of charcoal in the pot. I felt a wave of helplessness. My future on the great path may be limitless, but it was also a long road. First, I had to learn to turn off the stove when I was having an epiphany. I looked back and saw Jay leaning against the doorframe, watching me. The light of the setting sun cast a warm, golden glow around her. The corner of her mouth tilted up in a slight smile. Leo, yes, starting tomorrow, you can teach me how to cook. I froze, and then I smiled. Okay, my journey of cultivation, it seemed, was only just beginning, and its starting point, once again, was the kitchen. But what did that matter? The path, I was learning, could be found in a simple meal, a clean floor, and the swing of an axe.